And that's how we greet you this morning with a tribute to a great man. This is the agenda on the SABC News channel. My name is Desiree Chauke. Mpoteme is on the sign language screen. Coming up, as usual, we're chasing all the news-making stories of the day, including, of course, that special official funeral service for late Advocate George Bizos at the Hellenic Cultural Center in the Joburg CBD. This giant, who the president credited for contributing immensely to the attainment of our democracy, will be laid to rest later today at the Westpark Cemetery. Our colleagues Samkele Maseko and Abongile Dumako will bring us all of those details. Let us know at the agenda_SABC how you remember Uncle George. Let's start the show. Now, Advocate George Bizos, the human rights lawyer and one of the leading lights in the fight against apartheid, will be laid to rest at the Westpark Cemetery in Johannesburg this afternoon. Bizos was granted a special official funeral category by President Cyril Ramaphosa. The 92-year-old died at his home in Johannesburg last week. His funeral service will be held at the Greek Orthodox Church in Hillbrow this morning. Bizos served as legal counsel to the late former President Nelson Mandela for many years and was among the panel of lawyers who represented other defendants in the Rivonia trial in 1964. To start off the day, let's cross to our colleague Samkele Maseko. Samkele, what's the latest? What's been happening this morning?
Well, Desiree, indeed, the light is getting dimmer and dimmer for those South Africans who fought for the liberation of the struggle, the doyens of our liberation, those who were part of the turning curve in the liberation of this country with the Rivonia trialist. George Bizos was amongst those panel of lawyers representing the Rivonia trialists like Tata Andrew Mlangeni, former President Nelson Mandela, Ahmed Kathrada, amongst many of the Rivonia trialists. The light is certainly getting dimmer and dimmer as South Africa has lost three of these individuals who are pivotal in that particular liberation struggle and turning curve of South Africa's liberation struggle. I'm going to step out of shot, Desiree, as you can see the remains of Advocate George Bizos laying in his last ride here on planet Earth. A renowned human rights lawyer, a renowned activist in his own right, who hailed from student politics days at the University of Witwatersrand. He played a pivotal role in South Africa's liberation struggle, student politics, and you go to the various cases that he's taken on in representing South Africans, particularly fighting for their human rights. You look at the case where he also represented the former premier of the Free State Province. You go to his recent cases of late, which embroiled the Samkele Massacre, where the man who will deliver the eulogy here at his funeral, President Cyril Ramaphosa, will also participate in delivering that eulogy. You'd remember how he basically characterized the Samkele Massacre similar to the Sharpeville Massacre. As my colleague Tapiso Rapakwana is showing you visuals of the Greek Orthodox Hall here church, where the funeral private service for the funeral of George Bizos will take place. You can see there various family members and other dignitaries will go there for the private funeral service of Advocate George Bizos. And then later on, once that private ceremony or private service is done, the South African Armed Forces will then take over and will then drape his coffin with the South African flag, and then it will be handed over to the President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, for the official funeral of Advocate George Bizos to take place. And then he will be a entourage of the SANDF will then take it through and march and take it through to the Hellenic Cultural Center, where the official funeral will take place, and various dignitaries will be making speeches and delivering their messages of condolences to the Bizos family. And you'll also hear the eulogy from the President of the Republic of South Africa. What is interesting here, Desiree, is that when President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver the eulogy, you'd remember one of our colleagues, Aldrin Samkele, who covered that Marikana massacre inquiry in Centurion. You'd remember George Bizos when he quizzed the then Commissioner of Police, that would be Ria Piecha, on the nature of the Marikana massacre and how those miners were brutally gunned down. He asked a pivotal question. When those miners were gunned down, where were they facing? Were they facing the police, or were their backs against the police? Then he compared that to the Sharpeville massacre, where people were murdered by the apartheid regime and shot in their backs by then that administration of the apartheid government. And he gave similarities of how a democratic dispensation had taken on the tactics of those who had and who had oppressed the vast majority of this country. But George Bizos has definitely left his mark in the history of South Africa when it comes to the fighting of human rights issues within the country. But the man who was allegedly involved in that Marikana massacre, in that email of concomitant action, will be delivering the eulogy of a human rights activist, a human rights lawyer.
Samkele, are you able to give us a sense in terms of the people who have come through? Is it the full complement already? Because we have not moved to stage 1 yet. That only happens on Monday. So the new funeral limitations only kick in on Monday of increased numbers. Are you able to just give us a sense of the number of people who are there already?
At this point in time, we can say that there are about 20 people who are here, which are essentially support staff, broadcasters. Some of them are lined up outside the perimeter of this particular church. I'm just going to ask my colleague Thabiso Rapakwana just to show you some of the media personnel. You can see one of our camera colleagues from another media organization outside there as well. You can see other dignitaries and other individuals who are mourners of this particular funeral of Advocate George Bizos. They are here. Some of them are interviewing. You can see, I think that's Silo Hatang of the Nelson Mandela Foundation in one of the neighboring buildings here across and adjacent to this particular hall of where the funeral will take place. But government is certainly adhering to the level 3 lockdown, level 3 advanced lockdown regulations that are currently in place here in South Africa. If one may say even level 2 that's in place. They are essentially not breaking the lockdown regulations, as you've seen when the remains of Tata and Rumlangeni arrived in his home in Soweto, and where the police had to investigate how ANC members were able to gather there and effectively hold a rally, if one may put it like that, there. But it does seem as if government is particularly adhering to the lockdown regulations, as you've seen with the funeral of Uba Mlangeni. When the president gave the eulogy as well, the regulations were adhered to strictly by government. Even with us, when we arrived here, they were raising concerns that it certainly looks like the number of support staff, media practitioners as well, is certainly increasing, and they're going to have to limit the number of people who are going to be able to enter this premises here, as we do know that they are trying to adhere to the various lockdown regulations. But as it stands, even the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, has not yet arrived. We've seen a few family members of Advocate George Bizos who've arrived here, and they said that they've got the list of the various dignitaries and family members and relatives who will be allowed access to this particular Hellenic Cultural Center where the official funeral will take place, and also the Greek Orthodox Church where the private ceremony and service of the funeral of Advocate George Bizos will take place. But government and the family are adhering to the lockdown regulations that are currently in place, as opposed to those who will kick in next week, Monday, when the country goes to level 1 of the lockdown.
Samkele, they're setting the scene for us in an event that we will be watching for most of the morning, the funeral service, and then leading up to the burial of Advocate George Bizos. If you have the time, just go online. Just the many tributes in terms of articles that have been written about him. Advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi also has written an article about his experiences with Advocate George Bizos during the Marikana Farlam Commission. Interesting insights really about this amazing giant that has fallen. You're watching The Agenda. Let's now go to, all right, let's